The Storm of Destiny, Ali's Journey to the Cave of Wonders. This is the tale of young Ali, whose name means exalted in the ancient tongue, though he knew not the heights to which fate would carry him, nor the depths to which he must first descend. For as the wise ones say, he who would touch the stars must first journey through the earth's hidden heart. Chapter 1. The Storm and the Well. In the 13th year of his life, when the moon had completed its cycle, 13 times 12 since his birth, there lived a boy named Ali in a village at the edge of the great desert. His father was a humble weaver of carpets, whose fingers knew the ancient patterns passed down through generations, and his mother was renowned for her bread, which was said to be blessed by angels themselves. Ali was neither the strongest nor the swiftest of the village boys, but his heart held a curiosity deeper than the oldest wells, and his eyes sparkled with questions like stars reflected in still water. He would often sit with the village elders, listening to their tales of jinn and magic carpets, of Solomon's wisdom and the city of brass, storing each story in his heart like precious pearls. On this particular day, when the sun rose blood-red over the eastern mountains, Ali's grandmother, who possessed the gift of reading signs in the morning sky, clutched her prayer beads tightly and whispered, "Today the wheel of fortune spins. Today the hidden shall be revealed." The morning began like any other. Ali helped his father arrange the threads for a new carpet, the pattern depicting the legendary Garden of Iram with its pillars of ruby and emerald. His mother kneaded dough for the evening bread, humming an ancient lullaby that spoke of brave princes and underground rivers of honey. The village moved in its eternal rhythm, merchants calling their wares, children playing in the dusty streets, and the muezzin's call to prayer echoing across the rooftops. But as the sun reached its zenith, the sky began to darken, not with the gentle approach of evening, but with an ominous veil of dust and wind. The animals grew restless. The camels bellowed and pulled at their tethers, the goats bleated in fear, and the birds fell silent. The old men in the coffee house stopped their eternal game of backgammon and looked to the horizon with worried eyes. "A storm comes," said Hassan the elder, whose memory stretched back 90 summers. Not just any storm, but a storm of destiny, the kind that appears once in a generation to change the course of lives. The wind began as a whisper, then grew to a moan, then to a roar that shook the very foundations of the houses. Palm trees bent like reeds, their fronds whipping through the air like the wings of enormous birds. The sand rose in great curtains, blotting out the sun entirely, turning day into a twilight of swirling amber and brown. Ali's parents called for him to come inside, to shelter in the sturdy stone cellar beneath their home, but the wind caught their words and scattered them like leaves. Ali, who had been tending to the goats in the field beyond the village, found himself suddenly alone in a world transformed into chaos. The sand stung his eyes like 1,000 tiny needles, and the wind pushed him this way and that, as if invisible hands were playing with him. He wrapped his kaffa around his face, leaving only a slit for his eyes, and tried to make his way back to the village. But in the storm, all directions became one, all paths led nowhere, and the familiar landmarks of his daily life vanished behind the veil of dust. He stumbled forward, his hands stretched out before him, feeling for anything solid, anything real in this world suddenly made of wind and sand. His feet found a stone, then another, arranged in a circle. He recognized it as the old well, the one the villagers called the Well of the Forgotten, for no one remembered who had dug it or when, and its water had long since run dry. Thinking to shelter against its stone walls until the storm passed, Ali moved closer, feeling his way along the ancient stones. But the wind, as if possessed by a jinn with cruel intentions, gave a sudden violent gust. The ground beneath Ali's feet, already weakened by years of neglect and now battered by the storm, crumbled like old bread. For a moment, Ali felt himself suspended in air, his arms windmilling desperately for something to grasp. Then gravity claimed him, and he fell into darkness. Down, down, down he tumbled, his scream lost in the howling of the storm above. The walls of the well rushed past him, old stones worn smooth by centuries, and he thought surely this was his end, that he would join whatever bones lay at the bottom of this forgotten shaft. But Allah, in His infinite mercy, had written a different fate for young Ali. His fall was broken not by hard stone but by a pool of water, ancient and still, that had collected in the depths over countless years. The cold shock of it drove all breath from his lungs, and for terrifying moments he struggled in the darkness, not knowing which way was up. Finally, his head broke the surface and he gasped for air, treading water in the absolute blackness. Above him, so far above it seemed like looking at stars from the bottom of the ocean, he could see a small circle of dim light where the storm still raged. The sound of the wind was muffled now, ghostly, like the memory of sound rather than sound itself. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, Ali realized that the well was not perfectly straight. Years of erosion and shifting earth had created ledges and outcroppings along its walls. With effort, he pulled himself onto one of these ledges, his clothes heavy with water, his body shivering from cold and fear. He called out for help, his voice echoing strangely in the confined space. "Help! Someone, please! I've fallen into the well!" But his words were swallowed by the stone, and he knew that even if someone were standing at the well's edge, they would not hear him over the storm's fury. Time passed strangely in that darkness. It might have been hours or days. Without the sun or stars to mark the passage of time, Ali could not tell. He tried climbing the walls several times, but the stones were too smooth, too wet, and he would always slide back down to his ledge. His throat grew parched despite the water below, for he dared not drink it, not knowing what might lurk in its depths. As he sat there, huddled and afraid, Ali remembered the stories his grandmother told, of how the Prophet Yusuf was thrown into a well by his brothers, and how Allah had saved him and raised him to greatness. He remembered the tale of the merchant who found a jinn in a well and won 3 wishes. He wondered if his story would have a happy ending, or if he would become just another ghost story, the boy who disappeared in the storm. The storm above eventually quieted, but when Ali looked up, he saw that the opening of the well was now partially blocked by debris, palm fronds, wooden beams from some destroyed structure, and sand, so much sand. Only a tiny opening remained, allowing a shaft of sunlight to penetrate the depths, illuminating motes of dust that danced in the air like tiny spirits. He called out again and again until his voice grew hoarse, but no answer came. The village must have thought him lost to the storm, perhaps buried under a dune or carried away by the wind. He could imagine his mother weeping, his father's silent grief, the village elders shaking their heads and speaking of Allah's mysterious will. As despair began to creep into his heart like cold water seeping through stone, Ali noticed something he had not seen before. The shaft of sunlight, now that the storm had passed and the sun was at just the right angle, illuminated the wall opposite his ledge. There, partially hidden behind a curtain of roots and moss, was an opening, not large, but perhaps large enough for a boy to squeeze through. Chapter 2. The door in stone days blended into nights in the depths of the well, though Ali could only tell the difference by the thin shaft of light that appeared and disappeared with the sun's journey across the sky above. His water supply, though murky and tasting of earth and age, kept him alive, but hunger gnawed at his belly like a living creature. On the third day, or was it the fourth, Ali made his decision. The opening in the wall called to him with a promise of escape or death, and either seemed better than slowly wasting away on this ledge. He had tried everything else, climbing the walls until his fingers bled, shouting until his voice was nothing but a whisper, even trying to throw small stones up through the tiny opening above, hoping someone might notice. But the well kept its prisoner jealously. The opening was on the opposite wall, some feet below his ledge but above the waterline. To reach it, he would have to lower himself back into the water and swim across, then pull himself up into whatever passage lay beyond. The thought of entering an unknown tunnel, possibly to become trapped in an even smaller space, filled him with dread. But his grandmother had always said, "When Allah closes a door, He opens a window. But sometimes, child, you must be brave enough to climb through it." With a prayer on his lips, Ali slipped back into the cold water. It seemed deeper now, or perhaps he was weaker. He swam across the short distance, his clothes dragging him down, and reached up to grasp the edge of the opening. The stone was slick with moisture and strange growths that felt like silk and smelled of copper and earth. With great effort, he hauled himself up and into the passage. The tunnel was indeed narrow, barely wide enough for his shoulders, and he had to pull himself forward on his belly like a snake. The darkness here was different from the darkness of the well, thicker somehow, older, as if it had been gathering for centuries. The walls pressed against him from all sides, and several times he had to fight down panic, the terrible feeling that the mountain was squeezing him, that he would be trapped here forever, a skeleton in stone. But as he crawled, Ali began to notice something strange. The complete darkness was giving way to a faint, ghostly light. Not sunlight, but something else, a phosphorescent glow emanating from the walls themselves. Patches of luminescent salt or mineral deposits created a constellation of dim stars in the stone, barely enough to see by, but after the absolute darkness, it seemed like a gift from heaven. The tunnel began to widen, and soon Ali could crawl on his hands and knees, then finally stand upright. The passage opened into a cave, and what a cave it was! The ceiling stretched up beyond the reach of the strange light, and the walls were decorated with formations of crystal that caught and reflected the phosphorescence in 1,000 subtle hues. But it was the sound that truly amazed him, a musical tinkling like the smallest of bells, or like the laughter of jinn children. Water dripped from stalactites high above, each drop creating a perfect note as it struck the formations below. The cave was singing, an eternal symphony of water and stone that had been playing since before the first caliph walked the earth. Ali moved forward carefully, his eyes adjusting to this new world of subtle light and shadow. The floor of the cave was smooth, worn by centuries of water flow, and patterns in the stone looked almost like writing, though in no script he had ever seen. He thought of the stories of Solomon's seal, which could command jinn and speak to animals, and wondered if these marks were messages from that ancient time. As he explored, Ali found evidence that he was not the first human to walk these passages. There were marks on the walls that were definitely made by tools, and in one corner he found the remains of what might have been a torch, though it crumbled to dust when he touched it. Someone, perhaps many someones, had been here before. But how long ago? And where did they go? The cave continued deeper into the mountain, and Ali followed, having no other choice. The path sloped steadily downward, and the air grew warmer and more humid. Strange plants grew in cracks in the rock, pale, ghostly things that had never known sunlight, yet lived nonetheless. Some glowed with their own light, casting eerie shadows that danced as Ali passed. He began to hear new sounds, not just the dripping of water, but something else. A rumbling like distant thunder or like the breathing of some enormous beast. Ali's heart raced, but he pressed on. The path had begun to branch, passages leading off in different directions, but he followed the main tunnel, marked by the worn floor where countless feet had trod before. Then suddenly, the tunnel ended, opening onto a ledge that took Ali's breath away. Before him stretched a cavern so vast that its far walls were lost in shadow and distance. But it was not empty darkness. Lights twinkled throughout the space like stars brought down from heaven. Not phosphorescence this time, but actual flames, torches and lamps and fires that suggested habitation. And below, far below, Ali could see movement, shapes that might be buildings and smaller shapes that moved with purpose, people or something else. The rumbling sound was louder here, and Ali realized it was not one sound but many. Voices, machinery, the sounds of life and civilization, all echoing and mixing in the vast chamber. A path wound down from his ledge, carved into the rock face with steps worn smooth by use. As Ali began to descend, he noticed that the air smelled different here, not just of stone and water, but of spice and smoke, of cooking food and burning oil, of life and activity. His stomach growled loudly, reminding him of how long it had been since he'd eaten. The path switched back and forth across the cliff face, and as Ali descended, the lights below grew clearer, resolving into distinct sources. He could see now that there were indeed buildings, structures carved directly into the rock, with windows that glowed with warm light. Bridges of stone spanned chasms, and what looked like aqueducts carried water in stone channels suspended in the air. It was then that Ali saw his first inhabitant of this underground realm, and he had to stifle a gasp of amazement. Walking along a bridge below him was what appeared to be a man, but riding on the back of a creature Ali had only heard about in the wildest tales, a beast like a hippopotamus, but covered in long, shaggy fur that dragged on the ground. The creature's eyes were sealed shut, either by nature or by some ancient injury, yet it walked with confidence, as if it could see with senses beyond sight. The man riding it wore robes unlike any Ali had seen in his village. They seemed to shimmer with their own light, decorated with patterns that hurt to look at directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than the human eye could process. He carried a staff topped with a crystal that pulsed with inner fire, and at his belt hung various pouches and instruments of unknown purpose. Ali pressed himself against the cliff wall, not sure if he should reveal himself. Were these people friendly? Were they even people at all? The stories spoke of the jinn who lived in the deep places of the earth, who had ruled before Adam walked the earth. Perhaps he had stumbled into their realm, and they would be angry at his trespass. But as he watched, more figures appeared, and they seemed human enough in their movements and behavior. He saw women carrying baskets of what might be food, children playing a game with glowing stones, and men deep in conversation, their gestures animated and familiar. Yet all of them, he noticed, had that same quality of otherworldliness, as if they had been touched by the strange magic of this place. Ali continued his descent, moving carefully and quietly. The path led to a wide plaza carved from the living rock, where many other paths converged. Here, the activity was greater. Merchants had set up stalls selling goods Ali couldn't identify, and the air was full of voices speaking in a language that sounded familiar, yet remained just beyond understanding, like Arabic heard through water. As he stood at the edge of the plaza, uncertain of what to do next, a hand fell on his shoulder, Ali nearly jumped out of his skin, spinning around to face whoever had discovered him. It was an old woman, her face lined with age, but her eyes sharp and knowing. She wore robes of deep blue that seemed to contain depths of their own, and her hair was white as salt. She spoke, and to Ali's amazement, he understood her, though he was certain she was not speaking Arabic. It was as if the meaning of her words appeared directly in his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "A child of the surface," she said, her voice containing echoes of falling water. "It has been many years since one of your kind has fallen into our realm. Come, you must be hungry and tired." Chapter 3. The Underground Sky. The old woman, who introduced herself as Yasmin, the Keeper of Echoes, led Ali through the plaza and into one of the carved dwellings. The inside was more comfortable than Ali had expected. Carpets covered the floor, though woven with patterns that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them, and cushions were arranged around a low table. The light came from crystals set into the walls, glowing with that same inner fire he had seen in the staff earlier. "Sit, child," Yasmin said, gesturing to the cushions. "I will bring food and water, proper water, not the stale memory of rain you've been surviving on." She disappeared through a doorway covered by a curtain of what looked like woven light, leaving Ali alone to marvel at his surroundings. The walls were covered in tapestries that depicted scenes he couldn't quite understand, figures with too many arms, cities that seemed to exist in multiple places at once, and always, recurring in every image, 5 symbols that might have been crowns, or might have been something else entirely. Yasmin returned with a tray laden with food. Some of it Ali recognized, dates and figs, flatbread and honey, but other items were completely foreign. There was a fruit that glowed faintly blue and tasted of winter mornings, meat from some creature that was tender as butter and flavored with spices that made his tongue tingle with sensations that weren't quite taste. As he ate, Yasmin studied him with those sharp eyes. "You are from the village of the 7 wells," she said. It wasn't a question. Ali nodded, surprised. "How did you know?" "Child, we know all the settlements above our heads. We feel their weight, hear their stories carried down through stone and water. Your village is directly above the chamber of first echo, though your people have forgotten this. Tell me, do they still speak of the Well of the Forgotten?" "That's where I fell," Ali said, and told her of the storm and his accident. Yasmin nodded slowly. "Not an accident, perhaps. The well is one of the few remaining connections between the worlds. It opens only when it chooses or when the need is great. You were meant to come here, young Ali. The question is why." She stood and moved to a wall covered in what Ali had thought were decorations, but now saw were maps. Incredibly detailed maps of the cavern system, showing passages and chambers spreading out like the roots of an impossible tree. "Let me tell you where you are," Yasmin said, tracing the passages with one gnarled finger. "This is the realm beneath, the kingdom under the mountain, though those are just attempts to name something that existed before language itself. Long ago, before your prophet walked the earth, before even the pharaohs raised their pyramids, there was a great catastrophe. Some say it was a war between the jinn and the angels, others that it was a punishment from Allah for some forgotten sin. The truth is lost, but the result remains. A portion of the earth's children were driven underground, here to the deep places where we have dwelt ever since." She pointed to 5 large chambers marked on the map, each glowing with a different color. "We are not one people, but many, divided into 5 kingdoms, each with its own ways and wonders. The kingdom of copper lamps, where the flame speakers dwell, they who remember the first fire stolen from heaven. the kingdom of salt gardens where crystals are grown like crops and beauty is considered the highest virtue, the kingdom of basalt walls, the warriors and builders stern and proud, the kingdom of lunar lakes where the moon's reflection was captured in ancient times and still shines in their waters, and the kingdom of echo where sound itself is shaped into solid form. Ali stared at the map in wonder. Each kingdom seemed to sprawl for miles underground, connected by a vast network of tunnels and bridges, rivers and chasms. "And they all live in peace?" he asked. "Once, perhaps, in the early days, when the memory of the surface was still fresh and the pain of exile united us. But time is the great divider, and memory fades even in stone. Now," she sighed deeply, "now there is conflict. Each kingdom believes it should rule over all. Each king thinks his way is best. Wars are fought in the dark places where no sun sees the blood spilled." She moved to another section of the map where passages were marked in red. "And there are those who flee the kingdoms, who refuse to bow to any of the 5 crowns. They call themselves the free riders, for they have tamed the great eagles that nest in the high caverns and fly above all boundaries. Some say they are bandits and rebels, others that they are the only hope for peace. The truth, as always, lies somewhere between." Ali was about to ask more when a sound filled the air, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to come from the stone itself. Yasmin stood quickly. "The hour bell," she said. "Come, it is time you saw the truth of this place." She led him back outside and up a winding stair carved into the cavern wall. Other people were moving in the same direction, all with purposeful steps. They climbed and climbed until they reached a wide ledge that served as a viewing platform. From here, Ali could see the entire vast cavern spread below, but that wasn't what made him gasp. Above, where in the surface world would be sky, was something impossible. The ceiling of the cavern, impossibly high above, was not dark stone, but a swirling, luminous expanse that looked like captured aurora. Colors flowed and mixed, deep purples, electric blues, gold and silver streams that moved like living things. It was like looking at the night sky if the stars were rivers of light. "The underground sky," Yasmin said softly. "No one knows how it came to be. Some say it's the captured dreams of the surface world, falling down through the rock. Others believe it's a window to another realm entirely. But watch, this is why we've gathered." As Ali watched, shapes began to move across the luminous expanse. At first he thought they were clouds, but then he saw the wings, the proud heads, the fierce eyes. Eagles, but not like any eagles of the surface world. These were enormous, their wingspans casting shadows over entire districts below. Their feathers seemed to be made of metal and starlight, and their cries echoed through the cavern like thunder. Riding on their backs were figures in flowing robes, carrying spears that crackled with electricity. The free riders, Ali realized. They flew in formation, creating patterns in the underground sky. And as they did, the aurora responded, swirling and dancing around them. "They come every 7th day," Yasmin explained. "A reminder to the kingdoms that not all power rests in crowns and thrones. They bring news from the far reaches, trade goods that no kingdom can produce, and sometimes," she paused, "sometimes they bring warnings." As if on cue, one of the riders broke formation and descended toward the plaza. The crowd scattered as the enormous eagle landed, its talons gouging grooves in the stone. The rider dismounted, a woman with skin dark as obsidian and eyes that burned like coals. She carried something in her hands, something wrapped in cloth that seemed to writhe and whisper. She spoke in a voice that carried without shouting, in that same language that Ali somehow understood. I bring word from the desolate reaches. The sleepers stir. The ancient seals weaken. The time of the choosing approaches faster than the council predicted. Where is the keeper of echoes? Yasmin stepped forward, and Ali found himself pulled along in her wake. The rider's burning eyes fixed on him, and she smiled, an expression that was neither friendly nor hostile, but something else entirely. So, she said, the surface child has come at last. The prophecy begins to unfold. She unwrapped the thing in her hands, revealing a sphere of what looked like frozen shadow. Within it, something moved, something that hurt to perceive directly. The first of the 5 seals has cracked. The kingdoms must choose, unite or fall, and you, child of 2 worlds, will stand at the center of it all. She handed the sphere to Yasmin, who took it with hands that trembled slightly. Then the rider remounted her eagle and launched back into the underground sky without another word. The crowd erupted in whispers and worried murmurs, but Yasmin just stood there, staring at the sphere in her hands. Come, she said to Ali finally. There is much you must learn, and I fear we have little time to teach it. As they descended back to her dwelling, Ali's mind raced with questions. Prophecy? What prophecy? And what were these seals she spoke of? But before he could ask, a new sound filled the air. Not a bell this time, but something like a roar coming from the direction of one of the marked kingdoms on the map. Yasmin's face went pale. No, she whispered, they wouldn't dare. Not now. But even as she spoke, Ali could see lights moving in the distance. Not the steady lights of dwellings, but the flickering of torches carried by many hands. An army was on the move in the realm beneath, and the peace, fragile as spider's silk, was about to shatter. Chapter 4. The 5 Banners. The war drums of the kingdom of basalt walls echoed through the caverns like the heartbeat of some ancient giant. Ali stood with Yasmin on her balcony, watching as streams of lights flowed through the passages below, not just from one kingdom, but from all 5. Each stream was distinct. The copper-colored flames of the lamp kingdom, the crystalline blue glow of the salt gardens, the steady white lights of basalt walls, the silver shimmer of lunar lakes, and the strange shifting illumination of echo that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. It has begun, Yasmin said, her voice heavy with centuries of sorrow. The 5 kingdoms mobilize. Each believes the breaking of the first seal gives them the right to claim dominion over all. But why? Ali asked. What are these seals, and why do they fight over them? Yasmin led him inside and pulled out an ancient book, its pages made of thin sheets of mineral that chimed softly when turned. The writing upon them shifted and changed, adapting to the reader's understanding. As Ali looked, words in Arabic appeared, though they flickered occasionally into scripts he didn't recognize. Long ago, Yasmin began, when our ancestors first came to the realm beneath, they found something here, something that should not exist. 5 great seals, each one holding back. Something. No one alive remembers exactly what, but the legends speak of the ones who came before, beings of such power and strangeness that reality itself bent around them. The seals keep them sleeping, dreaming in the deep places where even we do not go. She turned the page, revealing an illustration that seemed to move when Ali looked at it sideways. 5 symbols arranged in a pentagram, each one complex beyond easy description. The seals were never meant to be ruled by one kingdom. The ancient compact was that all 5 would share the responsibility, would guard them together. But over time, each kingdom claimed special right to one seal, said their founders were the true heirs of the compact. And now, with one seal cracking, she shook her head. They see opportunity where they should see danger. A knock at the door interrupted them. Yasmin opened it to reveal a young man, perhaps a few years older than Ali, dressed in the patchwork clothing of someone who belonged to no single kingdom. His skin had the pale, luminescent quality of one born in the depths, but his eyes sparkled with humor despite the tension in the air. "Keeper Yasmin," he said, bowing slightly. "The Council of Refugees requests your presence and that of the Surface Child." "Refugees?" Ali asked. The young man grinned. "That's what the kingdoms call us. We prefer the free. I'm Kareem, by the way, former citizen of Lunar Lakes, current rider of winds, and speaker of uncomfortable truths." They followed Kareem through passages Ali hadn't seen before, narrow and winding, clearly not part of the official kingdom routes. The walls here were covered in symbols and messages in dozen different hands, graffiti of the underground, Ali realized. Some were pictures of the 5 crowns broken and discarded. Others showed eagles soaring above chains. The Council of Refugees met in a natural amphitheater, hidden in a fold of rock that the kingdoms had either forgotten or never known about. There were perhaps 100 people gathered, of all ages and appearances. Some bore the copper skin of the Lamp Kingdom, others the crystalline hair of the Salt Gardens. All had the same look in their eyes, defiance mixed with hope. At the center stood 3 figures: the rider-woman Ali had seen earlier, an elderly man whose beard seemed to be made of flowing mercury, and a child who couldn't have been more than 10, but whose eyes held ancient wisdom. "The Surface Child," the woman said as they approached. "I am Zahara, voice of the free riders. This is Magnus, who remembers the time before the kingdoms divided, and little Noor, who sees what others cannot." The child, Noor, stepped forward and took Ali's hand. The moment their skin touched, Ali gasped. For an instant, he saw through her eyes, saw himself glowing with a light that didn't exist in normal space, saw threads of fate spreading from him in all directions, connecting to every person in the cavern and beyond. "You're the key," Noor said in a voice like wind chimes. "The prophecy spoke of one who belongs to neither surface nor depth, who would come when the seals began to fail. You can walk between worlds, Ali. You can speak to all and be heard by all." "But I'm just a weaver's son," Ali protested. "I don't know anything about prophecies or magic, or neither did the prophet, peace be upon him, when the angel first came to him in the cave," Magnus said, his mercury beard rippling. "Greatness is not chosen by the great, but thrust upon the humble." Zahara spread out a map on the central stone. It showed the current positions of the 5 armies, converging on a central point marked with a broken seal symbol. "The kingdoms march to the Chamber of First Seal," she said. "Each believes that whoever claims it will have power over the others. They don't understand that the seals were never meant to grant power, but to contain it. If they fight in that chamber, if blood is spilled on the seal itself, it will shatter completely," Magnus finished, "and what sleeps beneath will wake." "So we stop them," Kareem said. "The free riders can reach the chamber first, secure it." "With what army?" Zahara interrupted. "We are 100 against thousands. Our eagles are swift, but they cannot stand against the war machines of basalt walls or the flame magic of the copper lamps." "Then we need a different solution," Ali said, surprising himself by speaking up. All eyes turned to him. "In my village, when 2 families feuded, we didn't send them to fight. We brought them to the elders' tent, where they had to speak their grievances and find common ground. Can't we do the same here?" Some laughed, but Yasmin nodded thoughtfully. "The boy speaks wisdom. The ancient laws do provide for parley, for a gathering of crowns, but it hasn't been called in 300 years, and it would require a neutral voice to call it," Magnus said, his ancient eyes fixed on Ali. someone recognized by all but belonging to none, a surface child perhaps bearing the echosphere as proof of the danger. The sphere Zahara had brought still rested in Yasmin's hands, its shadows writhing with increasing agitation. As they watched, a crack appeared in its surface, and a whisper escaped. Not words, but something older, a sound that made everyone step back instinctively. "Time grows short," Noor said, her child's voice carrying absolute certainty. The drums of war beat louder, and with each beat the seal weakens. Ali must go to each kingdom, must speak with each ruler, must make them see. "Impossible," Karim said. He'd never survive. The kingdom of copper lamps would burn him as a spy. The salt gardens would crystallize him for their collection. And the others? "He won't go alone," Zahara said. She whistled, a piercing note that echoed through the amphitheater. From above, an eagle descended, smaller than the ones Ali had seen earlier, but still magnificent. Its feathers were silver-white, and its eyes held intelligence beyond any normal bird. "This is Shaheen," Zahara said. "She's young, like you, but swift and clever. She will bear you where you need to go. And you won't go entirely alone. Each of us will give you something, a token to help you on your journey." Magnus pulled a small vial from his robes, filled with his mercury beard substance. 3 drops of this will let you speak any language perfectly for 1 hour. Use it wisely. Noor gave him a simple stone that looked ordinary, except for how it seemed to exist in more dimensions than 3. "When you're lost, hold this. It will show you the way, though perhaps not the way you expect." Karim offered a cloak that shimmered like heat mirages. "It won't make you invisible, but it will make people's eyes want to look elsewhere. Useful for one who must walk uninvited into throne rooms." And Yasmin finally gave him the echosphere itself, wrapped now in special cloth that contained its whispers. "This is proof of what comes. Show them what happens when the seals break. Make them understand." Ali took each gift solemnly, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his young shoulders. Chapter 5. The Sleeping Kings and the Stream of Time. Ali stood at the entrance to the Chamber of Eternal Governance, the most sacred place in all the realm beneath, where the ancient compact had first been forged. Shaheen, his eagle companion, perched on a crystal formation above, her silver eyes watchful. The journey here had taken 3 days through winding passages and forgotten roads, guided by Noor's strange stone that seemed to pull him toward paths that existed between the mapped routes. The chamber itself was unlike anything Ali had imagined. It was perfectly circular, carved from a single geode the size of a palace, its walls lined with amethyst crystals that hummed with their own frequency. But it was what lay at the center that made Ali's breath catch in his throat. 5 throne-like beds were arranged in a pentagram, each one crafted from a different precious material: gold, silver, obsidian, jade, and something that looked like crystallized starlight. Upon 4 of these thrones lay figures in royal garments, perfectly still, as if carved from stone. But Ali could see their chests rising and falling ever so slightly. They were sleeping, the deepest sleep he had ever witnessed. The 5th throne, the one made of starlight, sat empty. In the very center of the pentagram flowed a stream, no wider than a man's stride, but the water within it was like nothing of the natural world. It flowed upward in some places, backward in others, and when Ali looked directly at it, he could swear he saw images flickering in its depths, past, present, and future all mingled together like paint running in the rain. "The stream of forgetting," said a voice behind him. Ali spun around to find an ancient woman, so old her skin looked like parchment and her eyes were clouded with cataracts. Yet she moved with surprising grace, her staff clicking against the crystal floor, or the stream of time depending on who you ask. I am Selma, the last keeper of the compact. The kings, Ali said, gesturing to the sleeping figures. Why do they sleep? Selma laughed, a sound like dried leaves rustling. Ah, young surface child, you've stumbled upon the great secret of our governance. Come, sit, and I will tell you the truth that even many in the kingdoms have forgotten. She led him to stone benches carved with histories in pictographic script. As she sat, her joints creaked like old hinges, but her voice was strong and clear. Long ago, when the 5 kingdoms were first established, our founders faced a terrible problem. Power corrupts, as you surface dwellers say. And in our realm, where magic runs through the very stones, that corruption could be catastrophic. Kings who ruled too long became tyrants. Wars were constant. The people suffered. She pointed to the stream with her staff. Then they discovered this, a stream that exists outside normal time, fed by underground springs that touch the foundations of reality itself. They learned that drinking from it would put a person into a sleep beyond dreams, where time passes differently. A year asleep might be a day or a century, depending on the will of the sleeper and the need of the realm. So, the kings take turns? Ali asked, beginning to understand. Every 4 years, Selma confirmed. One king wakes and rules all 5 kingdoms, maintaining balance and preventing any one region from gaining too much power. When their time ends, they drink from the stream and sleep, and the next awakens. It has been this way for 800 years. But one throne is empty, Ali observed. Selma's expression darkened. King Haroun of the Salt Gardens. He should have drunk from the stream 2 moons ago, but he refuses. He claims the breaking of the first seal changes everything, that the old compact is void. He seeks to wake all the sleeping kings at once, to have them choose a single, permanent ruler to face the crisis. And the other kingdoms are marching to stop him or to support him, depending on who they believe should be that single ruler. She sighed deeply. The fools don't understand. The stream of forgetting doesn't just make them sleep, it preserves them, keeps them connected to the seals themselves. If all wake at once, if the cycle is broken completely. She didn't need to finish. Ali could feel it through the echosphere in his pack. The growing wrongness, like a discordant note in a perfect symphony. I need to speak with King Haroun, Ali said. And with the sleeping kings, if that's possible. The sleeping kings can be reached, but only through dreams. And dream walking is dangerous for one not trained in the art. As for Haroun, she stood, moving to one of the crystal walls. She touched it with her staff, and an image appeared. A man in robes of woven salt crystals, his beard white as snow, but his eyes burning with ambition. He stood in a vast hall made entirely of salt formations, addressing a crowd of his subjects. He speaks of a new age. Selma translated his words, for he spoke in the ancient tongue of the salt gardens. He says the surface world has forgotten us, that we hide in darkness while we could rule in light. He promises that when he drinks the tears of the stream rather than its waters, he will gain the power to shatter all 5 seals at once, freeing the ancient powers to serve the kingdoms. The tears of the stream? Ali asked. A legend, Selma said, but her voice was uncertain. It's said that the stream sometimes weeps for what was lost when the surface and depth were divided. These tears, if collected, grant not sleep but awakening, not just of the body, but of powers that should remain dormant. Ali felt the weight of his task settling heavier on his shoulders. He pulled out the echosphere, still wrapped in its protective cloth. Keeper Selma, I carry proof of what happens when the seals break. Would the sleeping kings listen if I could reach them in dreams? Would King Haroun listen if I could show him the danger? Selma was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. There is a way, but it requires courage, young one. You must drink from the stream yourself, not enough to sleep for years, just a few drops. It will let you walk between waking and sleeping, between real and dream. But be warned, in that state, you're vulnerable to things that exist in neither realm completely. She led him to the stream's edge. This close, Ali could hear it singing, not with water's voice, but with the sound of every moment that had ever been or ever would be. His reflection in its surface showed him not as he was, but as he could be, older, younger, different choices made and unmade. 3 drops, Selma instructed, producing a crystal cup no bigger than a thimble. No more, or you'll sleep until the mountains crumble, and hold tight to your purpose. The stream tries to make you forget why you came. Ali took the cup with trembling hands. The water was surprisingly warm, and it tasted of nothing and everything at once. His mother's bread, the dust of the storm, the copper scent of the cave, Shaheen's feathers, and 1,000 other sensations that had no names. The moment the 3rd drop touched his tongue, the world shifted. He was still in the chamber, but also somewhere else. The sleeping kings were no longer still. Ghostly forms sat up from their bodies, translucent and shimmering, looking at him with eyes that held centuries of wisdom. "A surface child," said the first, King Jabir of the copper lamps, his spectral form wreathed in flames that gave no heat. "It has been prophesied." "You carry the echosphere," said Queen Zara of the lunar lakes, her voice like moonlight on water. "Show us what it contains." Ali unwrapped the sphere with hands that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions. The moment it was exposed, the chamber filled with whispers, not words, but pure meaning, showing visions of what lay beneath the seals. The sleeping kings recoiled, their ghostly forms flickering. "By the first fire," King Jabir whispered. "They were not prisons but bandages, holding closed wounds in reality itself." "And Haroun would tear them all open?" asked King Rashid of basalt walls, his form solid as stone even in dream. "The fool will doom us all." "He doesn't know," said King Nasir of Echo, his voice reverberating from everywhere and nowhere. "None of us truly knew. We fought over the seals like children over toys, never understanding they were the only thing standing between us and the void." Queen Zara drifted closer to Ali, her ghostly hand almost touching his face. "You must stop him, child of 2 worlds, but not with force. That will only shatter things faster. You must make him see, make him understand. And for that," she gestured to the empty throne, "you must take his place temporarily. Drink deeper from the stream, sleep in his stead, and in that sleep you'll share dreams with him. Show him what you've shown us." "But if I sleep for 4 years," Ali began. "Time moves strangely in the stream's embrace," King Nasir said. "You might sleep for a day or a decade in the waking world, but in dreams, you can live lifetimes in moments. And you have something we don't. You're not bound by the compact. You can wake when you choose if your will is strong enough." Ali looked at the empty throne, understanding the risk. If he failed to wake, he might sleep until he was an old man, or forever. But if he didn't try, the kingdoms would tear themselves apart, and whatever lurked beneath the seals would break free. "Tell me what I must do," he said. The ghostly kings exchanged glances, and then King Jabir spoke. "First, you must gather the 5 tokens of authority. Each kingdom has one, hidden and guarded. Without them, even in dreams, Haroun won't listen. They are the eternal flame from the copper lamps, the perfect salt crystal from the salt gardens, the first stone from basalt walls, the captured moonbeam from lunar lakes, and the original echo from the kingdom of Echo. But those are legends, Ali protested. Myths told to children. All myths have roots in truth, Queen Zara said, and you have allies you don't yet know about. The free riders have been searching for the tokens for generations, believing they might break the cycle of sleeping kings and create a true democracy. They never found them all, but they know where to look. The ghostly forms began to fade as the stream's effect weakened. Remember, King Rashid's voice echoed as he disappeared. You're not just saving the kingdoms, you're saving both worlds. If the seals break completely, the catastrophe won't stop at the surface. Ali blinked, and he was back in the normal world, Selma watching him with concern. Only moments had passed, but he felt as if he'd lived hours in that strange between state. I need to find the 5 tokens, he told her, and I need the free riders' help. Selma smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. Then you understand what many kings never did. True power comes not from ruling over others, but from bringing them together. Shaheen will take you to the area of the free riders, but beware. The journey to collect the tokens will test you in ways you cannot imagine. As Ali mounted Shaheen and prepared to leave, Selma called out one more warning. The hardest token to claim will be the one from the Salt Gardens. King Harun has hidden it well, and he has allies you wouldn't expect. Trust your heart, young Ali, but keep your wits sharp. In the realm beneath, nothing is ever quite what it seems. Chapter 6. Eagles Above the Abyss. The area of the free riders hung suspended in the largest cavern Ali had yet seen, a massive void in the earth where the ceiling disappeared into darkness and the floor was lost in shadow. Bridges of rope and wood connected massive stalactites that had been hollowed out and turned into dwellings, and everywhere Ali looked, eagles perched, some sleeping, others preening their metal-bright feathers, and many watching the newcomer with intelligent eyes. Shaheen carried him in a spiraling ascent, passing through layers of activity. The lower bridges held workshops where men and women crafted saddles from spider silk and dragon leather, or so Karim had claimed. Higher up were the rookeries, where eagle eggs the size of boulders rested in nests of woven gold wire, and at the very top, in the largest stalactite of all, was the council chamber of the free riders. Zahara was waiting for him, along with a dozen other riders. They sat in a circle on cushions made from molted eagle feathers, and the walls were covered with maps, not just of the realm beneath, but of the surface world too, though those maps were old and faded. The Keeper of Echoes sent word, Zahara said as Ali dismounted. You seek the 5 tokens. We've sought them for 50 years, believing they were the key to ending the cycle of sleeping kings. We never found them all, but we learned much. She gestured to a woman with skin like polished copper and hair that seemed to smoke. This is Flame Dancer Amira, once of the Kingdom of Copper Lamps. She knows where the eternal flame is hidden. Amira stood, her movements fluid as fire. The eternal flame burns in the heart chamber, deep beneath the Lamp Kingdom's capital, but it's guarded by the salamanders, creatures of living fire who judge the worth of any who approach. Many have tried to claim it, most left as ash on the wind. And I'm supposed to succeed where others failed? Ali asked. You have something others didn't, said another rider, a man whose crystalline beard marked him as originally from the Salt Gardens. You're innocent of the kingdom's sins. The salamanders judge based on past deeds. You have no past here, no betrayals or broken oaths. You might be the only one who can approach them with clean hands. Tell him about the real danger, said a third rider, young but with scars that spoke of many battles. Zahara's expression grew grim. King Harun has sent his own agents to claim the tokens. He calls them the witnesses, beings transformed by drinking diluted tears of the stream. They're neither fully awake nor asleep, existing partially in the dream realm. They can walk through walls, reach into minds, and worst of all, they can feel the token's presence like lodestones drawing iron. How do we fight them? Ali asked. We don't fight them, Zahara said. We outrun them, outsmart them, or hide from them. Fighting a witness is like fighting a nightmare. The more you struggle, the stronger it becomes. Over the next 3 days, the free riders prepared Ali for his quest. They taught him to properly ride Shaheen, to communicate with her through whistles and touches. They showed him the secret paths between kingdoms, passages known only to those who flew above all borders, and they armed him with tools both practical and magical, a rope that could extend to any needed length, a lamp that burned without oil, and a compass that pointed not north, but toward whatever the holder most needed to find. The first token they sought was the original echo from the Kingdom of Echo. According to the free riders' research, it was hidden in the silence chamber, a place where sound went to die. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The journey to the Kingdom of Echo took them through regions Ali had never imagined could exist underground. They flew over forests of stone trees that grew downward from the ceiling, their branches heavy with crystal fruit. They passed lakes of liquid silver where things with too many eyes watched from the depths. They navigated through a maze of floating stones, held aloft by magnetic forces that made Shaheen's metal feathers spark. The Kingdom of Echo itself was unlike the others Ali had glimpsed, where the copper lamps had buildings of metal and flame and the salt gardens had crystalline palaces. Echo was built from materialized sound. The buildings hummed with their own frequencies, and walking through the streets, Ali had to dismount Shaheen at the border, as the sonic defenses would disorient any flying creature, was like moving through invisible music. The citizens of Echo had an otherworldly quality even by the standards of the realm beneath. They communicated partially through sound, but also through vibrations felt in the bones, and their clothing rippled with patterns that responded to every noise. Many wore masks of woven silence, and Ali learned quickly to speak softly, as loud sounds here could literally wound. The silence chamber was in the deepest part of the kingdom, accessed through the Museum of Lost Words. The museum's curator, a being so old that their gender was impossible to determine, led Ali through halls where the last words of the dying were preserved in crystal spheres, where love songs that were never sung floated in jars like captured butterflies. "The silence chamber," the curator whispered, their voice barely more than a thought, "is where we keep the sounds that should never have been made. The scream of the first murder, the lie that started the first war. And yes, the original echo, the first sound that bounced back from the edge of existence, carrying with it knowledge of what lies beyond." "How do I enter safely?" Ali asked. "You don't," the curator replied. "Safety is an illusion, but you might survive if you remember this. In perfect silence, even thoughts are loud. Empty your mind, or the chamber will fill it with everything you've tried not to hear." The door to the silence chamber was not a door at all, but an absence, a space where even light seemed to make no sound. Ali stood before it, trying to empty his mind as the curator had advised. It was harder than he'd expected. Every worry, every fear, every memory wanted to rush in and fill the void. Taking a deep breath, even that sounded thunderous here. Ali stepped through. The silence hit him like a physical force. It wasn't just the absence of sound, but its active opposite, a presence that pressed against his eardrums and made his bones ache. The chamber was spherical, its walls made of a material that absorbed everything: light, sound, hope. In the center, on a pedestal of crystallized silence, sat a sphere that looked like it was made of frozen sound waves, the original echo. But as Ali approached, he heard it, or rather, didn't hear it. The echo was speaking, but in reverse sound, words that extracted meaning from the air rather than adding it. To claim it, he realized he would have to give it a sound to echo. But what sound? What could be worthy of the original echo? Then he remembered his grandmother's lullaby, the one she'd hummed when he was scared of thunderstorms. A simple melody, nothing special to anyone else, but to him, it carried all the love and safety of home. He hummed it now, barely breathing the notes. The original echo absorbed the sound, considered it, and then reflected it back, transformed. The lullaby became a symphony of every loving gesture that had ever been made, every comfort offered in darkness. The sphere lifted from its pedestal and floated to Ali's hands, warm and humming with potential. But as he turned to leave, he found his way blocked by a figure that hadn't been there before. It was translucent, shifting, its features constantly changing as if it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. A witness. "The token belongs to the king," it said, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "You will surrender it." Ali tried to move past, but the witness flowed like water, always blocking his path. He remembered Zahara's warning. Fighting would only make it stronger. But how could he escape something that existed partially in dreams? Then he had an idea. The original echo in his hands could reflect any sound, but what if it could reflect silence itself? He held the sphere toward the witness and willed it to echo the perfect silence of the chamber. The effect was immediate and devastating. The witness, caught between existence and non-existence, couldn't maintain its form in the face of reflected silence. It scattered like mist, its last words a whisper. "There are more of us. You cannot gather all 5. Ali ran from the chamber, the original echo clutched to his chest. 1 token down, 4 to go, but the witness's warning echoed, ironic in this kingdom, in his mind. They knew what he was doing now. The race for the tokens had truly begun. Chapter 7. The Attack of the Flying Monkeys. Ali had barely returned to the eyrie with the original echo when the watchman's horns began to sound. 3 long blasts followed by rapid short ones. Enemy approaching, aerial assault. From the southern caves, where the volcanic vents created updrafts strong enough to lift boulders, came a sight from nightmares. The sky, or what passed for sky in the vast cavern, filled with dark shapes, hundreds of them, moving in chaotic swarms, flying monkeys, but not the amusing creatures of children's tales. These were grotesque things, their bodies twisted by generations in the deep caves, their wings leathery like bats but strong as eagles. Their eyes glowed red with volcanic fire, and their screams were pitched to shatter crystal. "Battle positions!" Zahara commanded, her voice carrying over the chaos. "Riders to your eagles! Ground forces to the bridge defenses!" But Ali could see they were outnumbered 10 to 1. The flying monkeys weren't just attacking, they were organized, splitting into groups to attack from multiple directions. Someone was controlling them. "There!" Karim pointed to a larger shape among the swarm. Riding on a monkey 3 times the size of the others was a figure in robes of volcanic glass. Ali recognized the regalia, a priest from the Obsidian Sanctum, the religious order that claimed to speak for the things that slept beneath the seals. "They're after the token," Zahara said, landing her eagle beside Ali. "The priests must be allied with King Harun. We need to—" Her words were cut off as the first wave hit. The monkeys attacked with disturbing intelligence, some going for the eagle's eyes, others trying to cut the bridge supports. Their screams were weapons in themselves, causing several younger riders to clutch their heads in pain and lose control of their mounts. Ali watched the battle unfold with growing horror. The free riders were skilled, but they were losing. For every monkey brought down by arrow or spear, 3 more seemed to take its place. And worse, some carried ceramic pots that they dropped on the bridges, pots that shattered and released a phosphorescent gas that made anyone who breathed it fall into convulsions. "We need a different strategy," Ali said to Shaheen, who clicked her beak in agreement. Then he remembered something from Yasmin's lessons about the creatures of the deep. Flying monkeys had evolved in darkness, using echolocation like bats. Their eyes glowed, yes, but they navigated primarily by sound. "I have an idea," he told Zahara, "but I need sheets of mica from the crystal farms, as many as we can get, and quickly." Zahara didn't question, immediately sending riders to gather what he asked for. Meanwhile, Ali took out the original echo. If these creatures navigated by sound, he held the token high and spoke into it. Reflect their screams back at them, but shifted, changed, confused. The original echo began to pulse, and suddenly the air filled with a cacophony of reversed monkey screams. The attacking swarm immediately fell into confusion. Their echolocation scrambled. They began running into each other, unable to tell up from down, friend from foe. "Now!" Ali shouted as the riders returned with sheets of mica. "Hang them between the bridges, angled to catch light from the lampposts." The free riders worked quickly, creating a maze of reflective surfaces. As the monkeys tried to recover from their sonic confusion, they were met with blinding reflections of their own glowing eyes, multiplied 1,000 times over. The psychological effect was immediate. Seeing themselves reflected endlessly, they panicked. In their culture, seeing one's reflection multiplied was a sign of death approaching. The priest on the giant monkey tried to rally them, raising a staff that crackled with dark energy. But Shaheen, at Ali's urging, performed a maneuver Zahara had taught them, a diving spiral that created a sonic boom. The sound, amplified and reflected by the original echo, hit the priest like a physical blow. He tumbled from his mount, his spell unfinished. Without their leader, the flying monkeys retreated in disorder, their screams now cries of fear rather than aggression. The free riders cheered, but Ali felt no joy. This was just the beginning. If the priests were involved, if they were allied with King Harun, then the danger was greater than anyone had realized. "We need to move faster," he told the council that night. "The longer we take to gather the tokens, the more organized our enemies become." Magnus, the ancient one with the mercury beard, had arrived during the battle's aftermath. He studied the original echo with eyes that had seen centuries pass. "The boy is right," he said, "but there's something else you all should know. The flying monkeys don't usually venture this far from their volcanic homes unless driven by something. I fear the second seal may be weakening as well. The creatures of the deep are growing restless." This news cast a shadow over their victory. If multiple seals were failing, all the more reason to act quickly, Ali said. "Where's the next token?" Amira stepped forward. "The eternal flame. I can guide you to the heart chamber, but the journey through the kingdom of copper lamps won't be easy. Since King Harun's declaration, the lamp kingdom has closed its borders. They trust no one, especially not free riders." "Then I'll go alone," Ali said, "or appear to. Shaheen can follow at a distance, and I'll use Karim's shimmer cloak to avoid notice." "It's too dangerous," Zahara protested. "If you're caught, if I don't try, we all lose," Ali interrupted. "The flying monkeys were just the beginning. What happens when the priests summon something worse? What happens when the kingdoms start using their war machines against each other instead of against common threats?" The council fell silent. They knew he was right, but that didn't make it easier to accept. This boy, barely 13 years old, was walking into danger that had destroyed grown warriors. "I'll go with him," Karim volunteered. "I know hidden ways into the Lamp Kingdom, smugglers' routes from my younger, more foolish days." "And I'll provide a distraction," Amira added. "I still have family there. My return will cause enough commotion to draw attention away from Ali's mission." Plans were made through the night. They would leave at what passed for dawn in the realm beneath, when the underground sky shifted from deep purple to lighter blue and the nocturnal predators returned to their lairs. But as Ali prepared for sleep, Nur appeared at his chamber, the strange child with ancient eyes, one of the 3 leaders of the refugees. "You dream true dreams," she said without preamble. "I've seen it in the wine-dark depths of future sight. Tonight you'll dream of the salamanders, and they'll judge you before you ever meet them in the waking world. Be honest with them, Ali of the surface. They respect truth more than courage, wisdom more than strength." Before Ali could ask what she meant, Nur was gone, vanished like smoke and wind. He lay down on his sleeping mat, the original echo beside him humming softly, and closed his eyes. The dream came immediately, more vivid than any dream he'd had before. He stood in a chamber of pure fire, but the flames didn't burn. Before him writhed creatures of living flame, serpentine and beautiful, their eyes like stars being born. "Surface child," they spoke in unison, their voices the crackling of logs and the whisper of candle flames. "You seek the eternal flame, the first fire stolen from heaven and given to the deep. Why should we let you take what has been guarded since before your prophet's grandfather's grandfather was born?" Ali thought of lying, of making himself seem grander than he was, but he remembered Nur's advice and spoke the truth. "Because I'm afraid," he said. "I'm afraid of what happens if the kingdoms tear themselves apart. I'm afraid of what lurks beneath the seals. I'm afraid I'm not strong enough or smart enough to stop it, but I'm more afraid of not trying. The eternal flame isn't meant to be hidden away. Fire was given to humanity to push back the darkness, not to be hoarded. Let me carry it where it's needed, to light the way to peace." The salamanders swirled around him, their heat intense but not painful. Fear and courage together, honesty without shame. "You may attempt the trial, young one, but know this, the eternal flame will test more than your worth. It will test your very essence. Fire reveals truth by burning away everything else. Are you prepared to see yourself as you truly are?" "I don't know," Ali admitted, "but I'll face whatever comes." The salamanders laughed, a sound like wind chimes made of flame. "That is the first wise thing anyone has said to us in 300 years. Come to the heart chamber, Ali of 2 worlds. We will be waiting." Chapter 8. The Barbarians with Wolf Heads. The journey to the Kingdom of Copper Lamps took 2 days through passages that seemed to grow warmer with every step. Karim led them through smugglers' routes he claimed he'd heard about from a friend, though his detailed knowledge suggested more personal experience. The tunnels were narrow, sometimes barely wide enough for a single person, and they had to leave Shaheen in a hidden valley to wait for their return. These passages were carved by the Copper Thieves Guild 200 years ago, Karim explained as they squeezed through a particularly tight section. The Lamp Kingdom produced the finest metalwork in all the realm beneath, and where there's fine work, there's always someone willing to steal it. "What happened to the guild?" Ali asked. "Official story? They were caught and executed. Real story?" Karim grinned. "They made so much profit they went legitimate, became the Merchants' Alliance. Half the respectable traders in the Lamp Kingdom have thieves' blood in their veins." They emerged from the tunnels into a maintenance corridor beneath the Great Forge District. The air here shimmered with heat, and the walls glowed with a dull red warmth. Above them, Ali could hear the rhythmic pounding of hammers on anvils, the hiss of hot metal meeting water, the roar of bellows feeding countless fires. "The heart chamber is below the main forges," Karim said, consulting a map drawn on what looked like dragon skin. "But to get there, we need to pass through the proving grounds, and that's where we might have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Ali asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. His suspicion proved correct when they peered around a corner and saw the proving grounds, a vast arena where the Lamp Kingdom's warriors tested their skills. But these weren't ordinary soldiers training. The arena was filled with wolf heads, barbarian mercenaries from the howling deeps, the unmapped regions beyond even the 5 kingdoms. They stood 7 feet tall, their bodies covered in ritual scars that glowed like embers. Their heads were indeed wolf-like, though whether through birth, magic, or elaborate masks, Ali couldn't tell. They carried weapons that looked too heavy for normal humans to lift. Double-bladed axes, hammers that sparked with electricity, and swords that left trails of fire in the air. "King Harun hired them," Karim whispered. "The priests must have told him someone would come for the eternal flame. They're not guarding the chamber directly. That would violate ancient law. But they're making sure no one unauthorized gets past the proving grounds." Ali studied the situation. There were at least 30 wolf heads, and they were organized into pack formations, clearly communicating through growls and gestures that suggested military discipline despite their barbaric appearance. A direct confrontation would be suicide. "We need another way," Ali said. "What about Amira's distraction?" As if in answer, an explosion echoed from somewhere above them. The fortress bells began to ring, not the steady toll of normal timekeeping, but the rapid clanging of alarm. Several of the wolf heads looked up, their ears, definitely real, Ali noted, swiveling toward the sound. A commander among them, distinguished by a cloak made from what looked like metallic fur, barked orders in a language that sounded like growls and snarls. Half the wolf heads immediately ran toward the upper levels, their powerful legs carrying them with inhuman speed. "That's our cue," Karim said. "Put on the shimmer cloak and stay close to the walls. Move when they move, stop when they stop. Wolf heads hunt by movement as much as scent." Ali wrapped himself in the cloak that made eyes want to slide away. It was a strange sensation, feeling not invisible but unimportant, like a piece of furniture no one really notices. They began to edge around the proving grounds, keeping to the shadows cast by the massive pillars that supported the ceiling. They were halfway across when disaster struck. One of the younger wolf heads, practicing with a chain weapon, swung wide. The chain struck a pillar inches from Ali, sending sparks flying. The wolf head's head snapped toward them, nostrils flaring. "Human," it growled in accented but understandable Arabic. "Hidden human. I smell fierce sweat and surface dirt." The other wolf heads immediately went alert, forming a hunting circle with practiced ease. They began to close in, using a spiral pattern that would eventually leave no escape route. Ali's mind raced. Fighting was impossible. Running would only trigger their chase instinct. Then he remembered something his grandfather had told him about wolves. They respected hierarchy and shows of dominance. Throwing off the shimmer cloak, Ali stood tall, or as tall as a 13-year-old could, and spoke in the commanding voice he'd heard his father use when dealing with difficult customers. "I am here by ancient right," he declared. "I come to face the trial of the eternal flame, as is my privilege under the old laws. Would the wolf heads of the howling deeps violate guest right and trial law?" The wolf heads paused, confused. The commander approached, his yellow eyes studying Ali with an intelligence that belied his bestial appearance. You claim trial right? He growled. You're barely a pup. The salamanders will burn you to ash. That's between me and the salamanders, Allie replied, maintaining eye contact despite every instinct screaming at him to look away. Unless the wolf heads have abandoned their honor code, I heard the packs of the howling deeps never broke an oath, never violated sacred law. Was I misinformed? The commander's lips pulled back, revealing teeth that could shred steel. For a moment, Allie thought he'd pushed too far. Then, unexpectedly, the wolf head laughed, a sound like boulders tumbling down a mountain. You have spine, pup, he said. I am Fenris Bloodmoon, pack leader of the Iron Howl. And you speak truth. We do not violate the old laws, no matter who pays our contract. He turned to his pack. Stand down. The pup claims trial right. We observe but do not interfere. Pack leader? One of the younger wolf heads protested. The priest said. Fenris's hand moved faster than Ali could follow, cuffing the younger warrior hard enough to send him sprawling. The priest is not pack. We take his gold, yes, but we keep our honor. Any who disagrees challenges me for leadership, here and now. None did. Fenris turned back to Ali. The path to the heart chamber is clear, but know this, pup. If you fail the trial, if the salamanders judge you unworthy, we will hunt you. Not because of the priest's gold, but because false claimants to trial right are an insult to the old laws. I understand, Ali said. If I'm unworthy, I accept the consequences. Then go, Fenris said, gesturing to a doorway carved with flame symbols. And if you survive, pup, find me after. I would hear how a surface child learned enough of our ways to invoke laws most kingdoms have forgotten. Ali and Karim moved quickly through the doorway before the wolf heads could change their minds. The passage beyond sloped steeply downward, and the heat increased with every step. The walls here weren't carved but melted, the stone flowing like frozen lava. That was insane, Karim whispered. You just faced down a wolf-head pack leader. Do you know how many trained warriors have died trying that? I didn't face him down, Ali corrected. I reminded him of his own honor. Sometimes the strongest weapon isn't force, but understanding what people value most. They descended for what felt like hours, the passage spiraling deeper and deeper. The heat became almost unbearable, and both of them had to strip down to their lightest clothes, sweat pouring from every pore. Finally, they reached a chamber door made of what looked like solid fire frozen in place. This is as far as I go, Karim said. The heart chamber allows only one at a time, and honestly, I don't think I could survive what's in there. The fire in that room is older than the kingdoms, older than the realm beneath itself. It's the fire that lit the first star, or so the legends say. Ali nodded and placed his hand on the door. It was warm but didn't burn, and at his touch, it swung open silently. The chamber beyond was both exactly what he expected and nothing like it at all. The room was spherical, like being inside a bubble of stone. Every surface was polished to mirror smoothness, reflecting and refracting the light at the center. And what a light it was! A flame that burned without fuel, suspended in midair, constantly shifting through every color fire could be, and several it shouldn't. Looking at it was like looking at the concept of fire itself, the platonic ideal from which all other flames were mere shadows. Around the eternal flame swam the salamanders, but seeing them in person was different from the dream. They were beautiful and terrible, serpents of pure plasma that left after-images on his eyes. Their movements were hypnotic, a dance that had been going on since the dawn of time. Ali of the surface, they spoke, their voices harmonizing into something that bypassed his ears and spoke directly to his soul. You come as prophesied, but prophecy guarantees nothing. You must pass the trial of 3 flames. I'm ready. Ali said, though he wasn't sure that was true. First flame, the fire that reveals. The chamber filled with images, reflections in the mirrored walls that showed not Ali's physical form, but his inner self. He saw his fears, letting down those who trusted him, failing to save the kingdoms, dying alone in the dark. He saw his pride, the secret satisfaction he'd felt when the refugees called him special, the part of him that enjoyed being the hero. He saw his anger at the kings who played with people's lives, at the surface world that had forgotten the realm beneath, at himself for being afraid. "Do you accept these truths?" the salamanders asked. "I do," Ali said, though it hurt to acknowledge the less noble parts of himself. "They're all part of who I am." Second flame, the fire that burns. Pain engulfed him, not physical, but emotional. He felt the grief of every person who had lost someone to the kingdom's wars. He felt the despair of the refugees, the fear of those living under tyrant kings, the loneliness of the free-riders who belonged nowhere. It was overwhelming, threatening to drown him in others' suffering. "Will you carry these burdens?" the salamanders asked. "I will," Ali gasped, tears streaming down his face. "If understanding their pain helps me help them, I will carry it all." Third flame, the fire that transforms. The eternal flame descended, surrounding Ali in a cocoon of light. He felt himself changing, not physically, but in ways he couldn't describe. The boy who had fallen down a well was burning away, replaced by something new, not better or worse, just different, more aware, more connected. He could feel the heartbeat of the mountain, the dreams of the sleeping kings, the slow thoughts of the stones themselves. "What will you become?" the salamanders asked. Ali thought carefully before answering. "A bridge," he finally said, "between surface and depth, between the kingdoms, between what was and what could be. I'll become whatever I need to be to bring peace." The salamanders circled him faster and faster, their forms blurring into a ring of fire. Then, suddenly, they stopped. "You pass," they said simply. "The eternal flame is yours, but know this: it cannot be contained or controlled, only carried. It will burn in your heart now, always. You will never be cold, never be lost in darkness, but also never be able to lie to yourself again. The fire reveals all, always." The eternal flame shrank, condensing into a sphere no bigger than Ali's fist. As he reached out to take it, it passed through his hand and into his chest, settling where his heart was. He gasped at the sensation, not pain, but awareness. He could feel every flame for miles around, every torch and candle and forge fire, all connected to the eternal flame within him. He left the heart chamber changed, and Karim noticed immediately. "Your eyes," his friend said. "They have flames in them now, small ones, but—" "What happened in there?" "I became what I needed to become," Ali said. "Come, we need to get back. Something's wrong. I can feel it through the fire. The kingdoms aren't just mobilizing for war. Someone's been stoking the flames of their anger, literally. There's a foreign fire in the realm beneath, something that doesn't belong." As they made their way back through the proving grounds, Fenris was waiting. "You survived," the wolf had said, and there was respect in his voice. "More than survived. You carry the eternal flame within you. I can smell it, like sunshine in your blood." "Fenris," Ali said urgently, "who hired your pack? Not just King Haroun. Who specifically?" The wolfhead's eyes narrowed. "You ask dangerous questions, pup. Please, something's wrong. The fire tells me—" "The fire speaks truth," Fenris interrupted. "Very well. We were hired by obsidian priests, yes, but they answer to someone else. Someone who wears many faces and speaks with forked tongue. They call her the Witness Prime." Ali's blood ran cold. Not just random witnesses, but a prime. one of the original beings who had drunk deeply from the stream's tears, who existed more in dream than reality. She's playing all sides, Ali realized, pushing the kingdoms toward war while seeming to serve King Harun. But why? Power, Fenris said simply. Wars make chaos. Chaos makes cracks. Cracks in the seals, specifically. She serves the sleeping ones, the things beneath the seals, has served them for centuries, waiting for this moment. Will you still serve her, knowing this? Ali asked. Fenris showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. Our contract was specific. Guard the proving grounds during the trial. The trial is over. The contract is complete. And wolfheads do not serve those who would wake the sleeping ones. That way lies madness and death for all. Then will you help us? Perhaps, if you survive what's coming. The Witness Prime knows you have 2 tokens now. She'll send worse than flying monkeys next time. Chapter 9. The Muscled Dwarves Riding Eagles. The journey back to the Eyrie should have been uneventful. Ali and Karim took a different route, one that wound through merchant quarters where the kingdom boundaries blurred and traders from all 5 realms mingled. But as they emerged from the tunnels into the vast market cavern, they found chaos. The air was full of screaming eagles, not the majestic birds of the free riders, but smaller, scrappier creatures with razor-sharp talons and beaks that could punch through armor. Riding them were warriors unlike any Ali had seen, dwarves, but not the stout, bearded figures of surface tales. These were masses of muscle packed into 4-foot frames, their arms thicker than Ali's waist, their skin covered in tattoos that writhed and moved. They were attacking everyone indiscriminately, merchant stalls overturned, civilians fleeing in terror, guards trying unsuccessfully to form defensive lines. But Ali noticed they weren't killing anyone, just causing chaos, driving people in specific directions. They're hurting them, he told Karim. But where? His answer came when he saw where the fleeing crowds were being driven, toward the descent, a massive pit that led to the uncharted depths where even the kingdoms feared to go. The muscle-bound, Karim gasped. But they haven't left their caverns in 50 years. They swore an oath of isolation after the last deep war. One of the dwarves heard him and laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Oaths mean nothing when the Witness Prime offers what we cannot refuse, a cure for the stone plague that turns our children to statues. Help her, she says, and your young ones live. Refuse, and watch your race slowly die. He dove at them, his eagle's talons extended. Ali reacted instinctively, the eternal flame within him flaring. Fire erupted from his hands, not burning, but binding, creating chains of flame that tangled the eagle's wings. The dwarf and his mount crashed to the ground, unharmed but immobilized. Please, Ali said, approaching the fallen dwarf. There has to be another way. The Witness Prime lies. She serves things that would destroy us all. Easy for you to say, Firebearer, the dwarf spat. Your children don't turn to stone while you watch helplessly. Ali felt the dwarf's anguish through the eternal flame. It was real, deep, the pain of a parent watching their child suffer. An idea formed. What if I could help? Ali asked. The eternal flame has healing properties. I don't know if it can cure the stone plague, but you would try? The dwarf's hostility cracked, showing desperate hope beneath. Even though we attack your people, you attack because you're desperate, not evil, Ali said. He placed his hand on the dwarf's arm, letting the eternal flame flow through the connection. He felt the wrongness immediately, not a plague but a curse, old and bitter, woven into the very bones of their race. The flame couldn't break it entirely, but it could loosen it, slow its progress. Buy time. The dwarf gasped, his eyes widening. The pain, it's less, not gone, but how? The eternal flame reveals truth, Ali said. And the truth is, this isn't a plague. It's a curse, which means it can be broken, but not by the witness prime. She's using your desperation. The dwarf struggled to his feet, then put 2 fingers in his mouth and whistled, a piercing note that hurt Ali's ears. Immediately, the attacking dwarves began to disengage, gathering in the market square. I am Grimjaw Iron Muscle, the dwarf said, war chief of the Muscle Bound. Speak your truth, Firebearer. Ali stood before the assembled dwarves, their eagles perched behind them like a forest of feathers and fury. He could feel their pain through the flame, generations of watching their children slowly turn to stone, the desperation that had driven them to serve the Witness Prime. The curse on your people is real, he began, but the Witness Prime didn't offer to cure it out of kindness. She needs you to cause chaos, to drive people to the deep places where things that should not be disturbed sleep. She's using your pain as a weapon. Then what do you offer? Another dwarf demanded. Pretty words? We need action. I offer truth and hope, Ali replied. He pulled out the original echo. This token can reveal the source of any sound, including the words that created your curse. Find the source, and you can unweave it. He held the echo high and spoke into it. Show us the birth of the stone plague curse. The sphere pulsed, and suddenly the air filled with voices, ancient, angry, speaking in a language that predated the kingdoms. But the original echo translated, meaning flowing directly into their minds. For your betrayal of the compact, for your greed in delving too deep, let your children become what you sought, stone and mineral, gold and gem, until one of pure intent, bearing fire from heaven, chooses to bear your burden as their own. The dwarves fell silent. The curse had been their punishment for breaking an ancient agreement, for mining in forbidden places, but it also had a escape clause. Ali didn't hesitate. I choose to bear part of your burden. Not all, that would kill me, but enough to slow the curse, to give us time to find a true cure. You would do this? For strangers? For people who just attacked you? For people in pain who deserve hope? Ali corrected. He reached out with the eternal flame, not to one dwarf but to all of them, creating a network of fire that connected them. The curse, feeling a new host, began to flow toward Ali. He gritted his teeth as he felt it enter him, cold, heavy, trying to turn his bones to stone. But the eternal flame fought back, keeping the curse from taking hold completely. When it was done, Ali's left hand had patches of skin that looked like granite, and his bones ached with new weight. But the dwarves were crying, tears of relief, of hope. The pain is less, Grimjaw said in wonder. Our children, they have time now, years instead of months. Find the place where the curse was spoken, Ali told them. The original echo will help. Break the curse properly, and we all heal. And the Witness Prime? Tell her the truth. You found a better offer. The free riders could use allies who can forge weapons in mid-flight. Your muscle and their speed would be unstoppable. Grimjaw grinned, showing teeth inlaid with metal. She won't like that. Good. Let her come complain in person. I have questions for her. As the muscle-bound departed, heading not to the depths but to the Eyrie to negotiate an alliance, Karim stared at Ali's partially stone hand. You took on their curse. That was insane. That was necessary, Ali corrected. We can't fight the Witness Prime and the kingdoms. We need allies. And sometimes the best way to make allies is to share their burdens. But even as he spoke bravely, Ali could feel the curse settling into his bones. He had perhaps gained the dwarves as allies, but at what cost? The stone patches on his hand were spreading, slowly but steadily. Time was running shorter than ever. Chapter 10. The Warrior Women. The kingdom of Lunar Lakes was unlike anything Allie had yet seen in the realm beneath. Where other kingdoms carved their homes from stone or built with metal and crystal, the Lunar Lakes existed in a series of vast chambers filled with water that glowed with captured moonlight. The founders, legend said, had been surface dwellers who missed the moon so much they found a way to steal its reflection and bring it underground. The water itself was sacred, and the kingdom was built on platforms and bridges that floated on its surface, rising and falling with tides that followed the invisible moon above. And it was ruled entirely by women, not because men were forbidden, but because of an ancient tradition. The moon chose the rulers, and for 800 years it had chosen women. The current queen, Amara the Moonstruck, was known for three things: her beauty, her wisdom, and her absolutely devastating skill with the lunar spear. Allie stood at the kingdom's border, where guards in silver armor that looked like solidified moonlight checked everyone who sought entry. They were all women, ranging from teenagers to grandmothers, but they moved with the fluid grace of trained warriors. "State your business," the captain said. She was perhaps 30, with skin dark as night and hair that literally contained stars, tiny points of light that shifted and twinkled. "I come seeking Queen Amara," Ali said. "I bear 2 of the 5 tokens and seek the 3rd, the captured moonbeam." The guards exchanged glances. "The queen has sealed the moonbeam vault," the captain said. "She says the tokens are better lost than used to perpetuate the cycle of sleeping kings." "I don't want to perpetuate it," Ali said. "I want to end it, but properly, with unity, not chaos." The captain studied him for a long moment. "You're the surface boy, the one who bears the eternal flame and took on the dwarven curse." She gestured to his partially stone hand. "Queen Amara has been expecting you, but know this, she'll test you, and her tests are unusual." They provided him with a small boat made of crystallized moonlight, surprisingly solid despite its appearance. As Ali poled across the glowing water, he saw the kingdom in its full glory. Buildings floated like lotus flowers, connected by bridges that looked like frozen starlight. Women went about their daily lives, trading, crafting, training, teaching children who splashed in the sacred waters without fear. The palace was a sphere of water suspended in mid-air, held by pure will and ancient magic. Ali had to pass through a waterfall that flowed upward to enter, emerging dry on the other side, another impossibility that the kingdom took for granted. Queen Amara waited in the throne room, and Ali understood immediately why she was called the Moonstruck. Her beauty wasn't conventional. Her features were pleasant but unremarkable. It was her presence that was beautiful, the way she moved through space as if dancing to music only she could hear, the way her eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever. "Alley of the surface," she said, her voice carrying the cadence of tides. "You come seeking the captured moonbeam, but unlike the other kingdoms, I won't simply test your worth. I'll test your understanding. Tell me, why do we follow the moon?" Ali thought carefully. "Because the moon is constant but changing. It goes through phases but always returns. It affects the tides, the cycles of life, the rhythm of the world." "A textbook answer," Amara said, sounding disappointed. "Try again. Why do we, the women of Lunar Lakes, follow the moon?" Ali looked around the throne room, at the tapestries depicting the kingdom's history, at the guards standing proud and strong. Then he understood. "Because the moon was the first rebel," he said. "In the old stories, the moon was the sun's sister who refused to be outshone. She chose to rule the night, to be subtle instead of obvious. to influence through tides and dreams rather than burning brightness. You follow her because she proved there's more than one kind of strength. Amara smiled and it transformed her face. Better, but you still think like a surface dweller, like someone who sees the moon from afar. Here's your test. Survive the trial of lunar phases. If you do, the moonbeam is yours. Before Ali could ask what that meant, the throne room dissolved. He found himself standing on a platform no bigger than a dinner table, surrounded by water that stretched to infinity. Above, a massive moon hung impossibly close, and it was moving, cycling through its phases rapidly. New moon, Amara's voice echoed from everywhere. The time of endings and beginnings. The platform beneath Ali's feet began to dissolve. He had to jump to another platform, but in the darkness of the new moon, he couldn't see where it was. He had to trust, and then he remembered the eternal flame within him. Its light revealed the path, platforms appearing like stepping stones. Waxing crescent, the time of growth and intention. The platforms began to grow, sprouting challenges. Warrior women materialized, attacking with weapons made of moonlight. Ali couldn't fight them all, but he realized he didn't have to. This was about growth, not conquest. Instead of fighting, he learned from them, copying their movements, growing in skill with each encounter. First quarter, the time of decisions and obstacles. The platform split into multiple paths. Each one led somewhere different, and Ali had to choose. He closed his eyes and let the original echo guide him, following the sound of truth rather than the appearance of safety. Waxing gibbous, the time of refinement and adjustment. The challenges became more subtle, not warriors, but puzzles, riddles that required not just intelligence, but wisdom. Ali found himself using everything he'd learned in the realm beneath, combining the lessons of all 5 kingdoms. Full moon, the time of culmination and clarity. Everything stopped. Ali stood in a sphere of perfect light, and he could see everything, not just the trial, but the entire kingdom, the entire realm beneath. Even glimpses of the surface world above. He saw how it all connected, how the divisions between kingdoms were artificial, how the surface and depth were part of the same whole. And he saw Queen Amara's true form, not the woman on the throne, but an ancient being, one of the original exiles who had founded the kingdoms. She had lived for millennia, changing bodies like clothes, but always maintaining her connection to the moon. You see me, she said, appearing beside him in her true form, tall, ethereal, with skin that showed the cosmos within. Few have passed this trial with their minds intact. The full moon reveals all, and most cannot bear the truth. You're not human, Ali said. None of the original founders were. We were the Nephilim, Amara admitted, the children of angels and humans, cast out from the surface for our mixed blood. We founded the kingdoms as refuge, but over time we became tyrants ourselves. The Sleeping King cycle was our attempt at redemption, to limit our own power. But it's failing now, because of the Witness Prime. She was one of us once, my sister in fact. But she gazed too long into the depths, listened too closely to the things beneath the seals. Now she seeks to free them, believing they'll grant her ultimate power. They won't. They'll destroy everything. I know. That's why you need this. She handed him a sphere that contained liquid moonlight, constantly shifting through all lunar phases, the captured moonbeam. But I have one more test, Amara said, not of skill, but of choice. I offer you what I offered your predecessor, the last surface child who came here 70 years ago. Stay. Rule beside me. With the tokens, we could create a new order, break the cycle properly. You wouldn't have to face the Witness Prime. You could have peace, power, purpose. It was tempting. Ali could feel the offer's sincerity through the eternal flame. Amara would make him a king, teach him secrets of the cosmos, give him a life of wonder and magic. What happened to the last surface child? Ali asked. He accepted, Amara said sadly. He ruled beside me for 30 years. Then the guilt ate him alive. He had left tasks unfinished on the surface, people who needed him. He threw himself into the depth rather than live with the regret. Then you know my answer, Ali said. I can't stay. There are too many people counting on me. But I make you this promise. When this is over, when the seals are secured and the kingdom's at peace, I'll make sure the surface world remembers the realm beneath. No more forgotten exiles, no more hidden kingdoms. We'll build bridges, literal and metaphorical. Amara smiled, and for a moment she looked young despite her millennia. You remind me why I fell in love with humanity in the first place. Very well, Ali of two worlds. Take the moonbeam, and take this as well. She kissed his forehead, and Ali felt power flow into him. Not magic, but knowledge. Suddenly, he understood the tides, the cycles, the secret language of the moon. He could walk on water if he chose, could call the tides to his aid. For the battle ahead, Amara explained, the witness prime has grown strong. You'll need every advantage. As Ali left the kingdom of lunar lakes, the guard saluted him, a gesture they reserved for proven warriors. The captain who had questioned him earlier approached. Your Majesty told us what you chose, she said. A lesser man would have accepted her offer. We'll remember that. If you need us, the lunar guard will answer. Ali nodded his thanks, but his mind was already on the next challenge. 3 tokens down, 2 to go. But the hardest was yet to come. The perfect salt crystal from King Harun's own kingdom. The king who had started all of this, who refused to sleep, who sought to break the ancient cycle. It was time to face him directly. The warrior women of Lunar Lakes watched him go, and in their eyes was something rare. Respect for a male who understood that strength came in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest courage was in refusing power when it was freely offered. As Shaheen carried him toward his next destination, Ali felt the weight of the captured moonbeam in his pack, its light pulsing with the rhythm of tides he now understood. The moon had chosen him not as a ruler, but as a bridge, someone who could walk between worlds and unite them. The real test was just beginning. Chapter 11. The Conspiracy at the Stream. Ali's plan to infiltrate the salt gardens was daring in its simplicity. Rather than sneak in, he would walk through the front gate, using a combination of the Shimmer Cloak's misdirection and the Lunar Lake's official seal that Queen Amara had provided. As a diplomatic envoy, even King Harun couldn't refuse him entry without breaking ancient guest laws. The salt gardens were breathtaking. Where other kingdoms built, the salt gardens grew. Everything was crystallized salt, but not the simple white cubic crystals of the surface. These were salts of every color imaginable, growing in impossible formations. Trees of blue salt bore fruit of red crystal. Flowers of yellow salt turned to follow people as they passed, and everywhere the sound of growing crystal, a constant tinkling like distant wind chimes. The people of the salt gardens had adapted to their environment. Their hair was stiff with salt crystals, their skin had a subtle shimmer, and their clothes were woven from flexible salt fibers that chimed softly as they moved. They watched Ali with suspicious eyes. Word of his token quest had spread. King Harun's palace was a mountain of pure white salt, carved and grown into spires that defied gravity. Ali was escorted by guards whose armor was made of hardened salt, stronger than steel, their spears tipped with points that could pierce stone. But it was what Ali saw along the way that truly disturbed him. The people were afraid, not just worried about war, but terrified of their own king. He saw citizens arrested for thought crimes. Apparently, Harun had mystics who claimed to read rebellious thoughts in the patterns of salt crystals. He saw children separated from parents deemed unworthy of raising the next generation. This wasn't just a king refusing to sleep. This was tyranny. The throne room was a study in paranoid grandeur. Every surface was mirrored salt, allowing Harun to see anyone approaching from any angle. Guards stood at every door and window, and behind the throne, Ali saw them. 3 witnesses, their translucent forms shifting constantly, whispering in Harun's ear. King Harun himself was not what Ali expected. He was young, perhaps 30, with the kind of harsh beauty that salt sculpture might have, but his eyes were wild, darting constantly, and his hands trembled with barely contained energy. "The surface, child," he said, his voice sharp as crystal breaking. "Come to steal from me, no doubt. Come to perpetuate the failed system that keeps us trapped underground." "I've come to talk," Ali said calmly, "to understand why you've broken the compact." "Broken?" Harun laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I've freed us. For 800 years, we've hidden like rats while the surface world forgets us. No more. When I drink the stream's tears, when I shatter all 5 seals, the power released will raise the kingdoms to the surface. We'll reclaim our birthright." "You'll destroy everything," Ali said. "The seals don't contain power. They contain lies," Harun shrieked. "Lies told by the Nephilim to keep us weak." He gestured, and guards moved to surround Ali. "You carry 3 tokens. Give them to me, and I might let you live to see the new world I create." Ali noticed something crucial. While Harun ranted, one of the witnesses had drifted closer to the hidden vault door behind a salt tapestry. It was trying to be subtle, but the eternal flame let Ali sense all heat, even the cold heat of dream beings. The witness was trying to steal the perfect salt crystal itself. "You're being played," Ali said urgently. "The witnesses aren't serving you. They're using you. Look." Harun turned just in time to see the witness phase through the vault door. His face went from pale to furious. "Treachery!" He raised his hand and salt spears erupted from the floor, piercing the witness. It screamed and dissipated, but the damage was done. The vault door was open, and inside, Ali could see the perfect salt crystal, a sphere that contained every type of salt that had ever existed, from the first tears of the first ocean to the salt of stars themselves. What happened next was chaos. The remaining 2 witnesses attacked Harun. Guards rushed to defend their king, and in the confusion, Ali did the only thing he could think of. He ran for the crystal. The vault was protected by more than locks. The moment Ali entered, salt began growing from his skin, trying to crystallize him from the outside in. But the eternal flame fought back, melting the salt as fast as it formed. The competing forces created a steam that made it hard to see, harder to breathe. The perfect salt crystal sat on a pedestal of black salt, the crystallized tears of betrayal, according to the inscription. As Ali reached for it, he heard Harun behind him. "You won't take it," the king screamed. "I need it. Without it, I can't—" He stopped mid-sentence. Ali turned to see Harun staring at his own hands, which were beginning to dissolve. The witness's touch had infected him with their dream state, and without the crystal to anchor him, he was losing cohesion with reality. "Help me," Harun gasped, his arrogance replaced by terror. "Please, I don't want to become like them, lost between waking and sleeping." Ali faced a choice. He could take the crystal and leave Harun to his fate, poetic justice for a tyrant. Or he grabbed the crystal with one hand and Harun with the other, creating a circuit. The crystal's power flowed through Ali and into Harun, stabilizing his form, but it also created a connection between them, and through it, Ali felt the truth. Harun hadn't always been a tyrant. He had been an idealistic young prince who genuinely wanted to free his people. But the Witness Prime had been whispering to him for years, feeding his paranoia, twisting his noble goals into megalomaniac ambitions. She had made him what he was. "I see it now," Harun whispered, tears of salt streaming down his face. She was in my dreams, every night, telling me I was chosen, telling me everyone else was an enemy. I became a monster. "You became what she needed you to become," Ali said. "But it's not too late. Help me stop her." I can't. The things I've done, the people I've hurt." "Then make amends. Start by releasing your prisoners. Call off your armies. Tell the truth about the Witness Prime." Harun nodded slowly. As they emerged from the vault, still linked through the crystal, the guards stood uncertain. Their king looked broken, aged decades in minutes. "Stand down," Harun commanded, his voice hoarse. "All of you, release the prisoners. Send word to all forces, the war is cancelled, and bring me the speakers of truth. I have a confession to make." Over the next hour, Harun spoke to his people through the salt resonance that connected every crystal in the kingdom. He confessed his manipulation, his tyranny, his deception. He abdicated the throne, declaring that the Salt Gardens would choose new leadership through the ancient method, letting the salt itself select the purest heart. But as Ali prepared to leave with the fourth token, Harun grabbed his arm. "She knows you have 4 now," he warned. "The Witness Prime, she'll come for you personally, and she's more powerful than you imagine. She's been drinking the stream's tears for centuries, drop by drop. She exists more in dream than reality now. Normal weapons can't touch her." "Then how do I fight her?" "You don't fight her," Harun said. "You make her remember what she used to be. The tokens aren't just keys or symbols, they're memories. The eternal flame remembers the first warmth that defied the cold void. The original echo remembers the first word spoken in darkness. The captured moonbeam remembers the first light that wasn't the sun. The perfect salt crystal remembers the first tears of joy and sorrow. And the last token, the first stone from basalt walls, remembers the first foundation, the first thing built rather than grown or found. Together, they tell the story of creation itself. Show her that story. Make her remember when she was part of creation rather than its enemy. And maybe you can save her instead of destroying her." Ali looked at the broken king with new respect. "You've thought about this a lot. I had to understand my enemy to serve her. Now I understand she was as much a victim as I was, just victim to something older and darker." Harun pulled out an ancient map. The stream of time isn't just in the chamber of eternal governance. It has a source deep in the unmapped regions. That's where she'll be gathering her power, preparing to break all 5 seals at once. During the next convergence, Ali realized, when all 5 kingdoms' ley lines align, that's in 3 days, Harun confirmed. "You have 3 days to get the last token and stop her." As Ali left the Salt Gardens, carrying the perfect salt crystal, he saw the kingdom already changing. The fear was lifting from people's faces. Children were being reunited with parents. The salt itself seemed brighter, cleaner, as if Harun's confession had purified it. But there was no time to celebrate. 3 days to reach basalt walls, convince them to give up their most sacred relic, and then somehow stop a being who existed more in nightmare than reality. Shaheen was waiting at the border, and she clicked her beak in greeting. But as Ali mounted, he noticed she was injured, claw marks along her side. "What happened?" The answer came in the form of shadows descending from above. Not flying monkeys this time, but shadow worms, creatures of living darkness that the Witness Prime had summoned from the spaces between dreams. They attacked in perfect silence, their touch draining warmth and hope. Ali fought back with the eternal flame, but for every one he destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. And worse, he could feel her presence now, the Witness Prime, watching through her creature's eyes. "You cannot stop what has already begun," her voice echoed in his mind. "The seals crack, the sleepers stir. Your tokens are meaningless against the tide of history." "History can be changed," Ali replied, using the original echo to amplify his voice across dimensions. "You were Nephilim once. You had a name, a purpose beyond destruction. That being is dead. I am what remains when hope dies, when love fails, when even memory forgets itself." The shadow worms pressed closer, and Ali realized he couldn't fight them all. But then salvation came from unexpected quarters. The ground erupted, and the muscle-bound dwarves emerged, their eagles carrying lanterns of captured sunlight. The shadow worms recoiled from the light. "Thought you could use some help," Grimjaw called out. "The free riders sent word. Every ally you've made is converging on basalt walls. If we're making a stand, we're making it together." The Lunar Guard arrived next, their water magic creating barriers the shadows couldn't cross. Then came warriors from Echo, using sound itself as a weapon. Even a contingent from the Salt Gardens, led by their newly chosen leader, a child whose pure heart the Salt had recognized. "You gather insects to face a god," the Witness Prime's voice mocked. "We gather friends to save a lost soul," Ali corrected. The shadow worms retreated, but Ali knew this was just the beginning. The Witness Prime had revealed herself too early, which meant she was confident in her victory. Something was happening at the stream's source, something that would make the tokens irrelevant if he didn't hurry. The countdown had begun. 3 days to save 2 worlds. Chapter 12. Feather and Bell. The kingdom of basalt walls stood as it had for 1,000 years, immovable, implacable, carved from the bones of the earth itself. Every surface was black stone polished to a mirror sheen, every angle precisely calculated for maximum defense. This was not a kingdom that grew or flowed or changed. This was a kingdom that endured. King Rashid the Stern received Ali in a throne room that was also a war room. Maps covered every wall, showing not just the realm beneath, but theoretical invasion routes, supply lines, defensive positions. The king himself was old, his dark skin weathered like ancient leather, his white beard trimmed with military precision. "You want the first stone," he said without preamble, "the foundation of our kingdom, the rock upon which all else is built. Give me one reason why I shouldn't have you executed for even asking." "Because in 3 days, none of this will matter if the Witness Prime succeeds," Ali replied. "Your maps, your walls, your perfect defenses, they mean nothing against what sleeps beneath the seals. You speak of the sleepers as if you've seen them." Ali pulled out the echo sphere that had started his journey. "Listen." The sphere whispered its terrible truths, and even King Rashid, who had faced dragons and demons in his youth, paled at what he heard. "By the first stone itself," he breathed. "They're not invaders, they're antibodies, the earth itself trying to reject us. Unless we prove we belong," Ali said. "The 5 tokens together tell the story of creation, of how consciousness arose from void. If we can remind the sleepers that we're part of that creation, not separate from it." "You're gambling the fate of 2 worlds on a story?" "Stories are all we are," Ali said. "You're not really made of flesh and bone. You're made of the stories you tell yourself, the history you choose to remember. The Witness Prime forgot her story and became something else. We need to help her remember. King Rashid stood and walked to a wall that looked solid. He pressed specific stones in sequence, and it opened to reveal a chamber Ali hadn't expected, a garden. In the heart of this fortress of stone grew a single tree, its roots wrapping around a boulder that glowed with inner light. The first stone, Rashid said. It fell from nowhere before there was a here for it to fall to. The first solid thing in a universe of potential. We built our kingdom around it, drew strength from its certainty. But, he gestured to the tree, even stone can nurture life, given time. Your words ring true, young Ali. We've forgotten that strength and flexibility can coexist. He approached the stone, placing his weathered hands on its surface. I, Rashid ibn Rashid, 93rd King of Basalt Walls, release you from your guardianship. Go with this boy. Save us all. The stone lifted from its place, shrinking to fit in Ali's hand. But as it did, the tree remained standing, its roots now holding air, but somehow still strong. A miracle, Rashid murmured. No, Ali said, understanding flooding through him. A truth. The stone was never holding the tree up. The tree was choosing to embrace the stone. They were partners, not prisoner and prison. Suddenly, the ground shook. Not an earthquake, but something else. A vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. She started, Ali said. The Witness Prime is breaking the seals. Then we have no time, Rashid declared. He pulled out a war horn older than the kingdom. This hasn't been blown in 500 years. It calls every warrior, every citizen capable of fighting, to the ultimate defense. The horn's call echoed through stone itself, and within minutes the throne room filled with warriors. Not just from Basalt Walls, but from all 5 kingdoms, led by the allies Ali had gathered. The final battle, Rashid announced, will not be kingdom against kingdom, but all kingdoms against the void. We march to the source. The journey to the stream's source should have taken weeks, but the urgency had awakened something in the realm beneath itself. Passages that had been closed opened, distances shortened. It was as if the underground world wanted them to arrive in time. They emerged into a cavern that defied comprehension. The ceiling was lost in darkness that wasn't absence of light, but presence of something else. The floor was a maze of streams, all flowing from a central point where reality seemed to fold in on itself. And there, at the center, stood the Witness Prime. She had shed all pretense of human form. She was a void in the shape of a woman, outlined by dreams that screamed. Around her, the 5 seals floated, massive stones covered in script that hurt to read. They were all cracked, light bleeding from the fissures. Too late, she said, her voice the sound of hope dying. The sleepers wake. Your world ends. Both worlds end, and from the ending, nothing. Beautiful, perfect nothing. You're wrong, Ali said, stepping forward. His allies tried to stop him, but he shook them off. It doesn't end in nothing. It ends in something new. That's what you've forgotten. He pulled out all 5 tokens, and they began to orbit around him, creating a pattern that echoed the seal's arrangement. The eternal flame, he began, remembers when the first warmth defied the cold. Not to destroy it, but to create difference, to make cold and warm mean something. The flame pulsed, and images of the first stars appeared in the air. The original echo remembers the first sound that came back changed, not diminished but transformed, carrying new meaning. Sounds filled the cavern, music that predated instruments, voices that predated language. The captured moonbeam remembers the first reflected light, not stolen but shared, proving that illumination could come from more than one source. Light danced through the chamber, creating and destroying shadows in endless play. The perfect salt crystal remembers the first tears, not weakness but connection, the moment when one being could feel what another felt. The air tasted of oceans that no longer existed, of tears both joyous and sorrowful. And the first stone remembers the first foundation, not limitation but possibility, the platform from which all else could be built. The ground solidified, became real in a way it hadn't been before. Together, Ali said, they tell your story. You were Namira, the Nephilim who first dreamed of bridging worlds. You didn't fail. You succeeded too well. You touched the void between realities and got lost in it, but you can find your way back. The Witness Prime, Namira, screamed. It was a sound that should have shattered stone, but the tokens absorbed it, transformed it, and in that transformation, something changed. The Void Woman flickered, and for a moment Ali saw her true form, tall, beautiful, with stars in her skin and eternity in her eyes. I remember, she whispered. I remember loving this world, both worlds, but the void, it's so hungry, it wants to eat everything. Then feed it something else, Ali said. He held out his partially stone hand, the curse he had taken on. Feed it pain transformed to purpose. Feed it division becoming unity. Feed it the story of how surface and depth, human and Nephilim, all became one people. The 5 kingdoms' representatives stepped forward. One by one, they added their voices to Ali's, telling the story of their people, their struggles, their hopes. The free riders spoke of freedom that included responsibility. The muscle-bound spoke of strength that protected rather than conquered. Even King Haroon, broken but present, spoke of redemption being possible for anyone. The seals stopped cracking. Instead, they began to heal, the light from their fissures weaving back together. The sleepers, those antibodies of reality, listened to the story and recognized themselves in it. They were not separate from creation but part of it, the immune system that had mistaken the body for a disease. Namira collapsed, her void form dissipating. What remained was a woman, Nephilim but mortal again, weeping tears that were just salt and water. 800 years, she sobbed. 800 years lost to the darkness. But not wasted, Ali said, helping her stand. You taught us what happens when we forget our connections. You reminded us that we're stronger together. As the seals fully healed, something miraculous happened. The ceiling of the great cavern began to crack, not breaking but opening. Light poured in, real sunlight. The barrier between worlds, Queen Amara gasped. It's not breaking, it's becoming permeable. Ali understood. The healing of the seals, the unity of the kingdoms, the bridging of stories, it had all created something new. Not the violent eruption King Haroon had wanted, but a gentle opening. Passages were forming, stable ones, between the realm beneath and the surface world. We can go home, someone whispered. Those who want to can go home. And those who want to stay can stay, Ali added. But now we can visit, trade, share. No more forgotten kingdoms. No more lost people. Epilogue. The return. The 7 years had passed in the realm beneath, though Ali learned that time moved differently here. On the surface, perhaps a year had gone by, maybe 2. The storm that had swallowed him was legend now. The boy who disappeared a cautionary tale. Ali stood at the mouth of a new passage, one that opened near his village. He was 20 now, changed by his adventures. His left hand still bore patches of stone, but he had learned to see them as a reminder rather than a curse. The tokens were distributed among the 5 kingdoms, no longer hoarded but shared, their power used to maintain the passages between worlds. Shaheen waited behind him, her silver feathers gleaming. She would stay in the realm beneath, The surface sun was too harsh for her underground-adapted eyes, but she would visit through the passages, as Ali would visit her. "Ready?" Karim asked. He had decided to come with Ali, to see the sun he had only heard about in stories. "I don't know," Ali admitted. "How do you go home when you're not the same person who left?" "You go home as who you are now," Namira said. She had recovered much of her power, but chose to use it for healing rather than destroying. "And you trust that love recognizes essence beyond form." Ali took a deep breath and stepped into the sunlight. The village looked exactly as he remembered, yet completely different. Or perhaps it was his eyes that had changed, now able to see the connections between all things, the stories that bound people together. His house still stood where it always had. Smoke rose from the chimney. He could smell his mother's bread baking. He knocked on the door. His mother opened it, and for a moment they just stared at each other. Then she smiled, tears streaming down her face. "Ali," she said, "my boy, you've come home." "I have stories to tell," Ali said. "Then come in," his father's voice called from inside. "The bread is warm, the tea is ready, and we have all the time in the world." As Ali entered his childhood home, he heard a bell ringing in the distance, the evening prayer call. But now he also heard its echo, carrying down through the new passages to the realm beneath, where 5 kingdoms were learning to live as one people. He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 items the kingdoms had given him as farewell gifts: an eagle feather from Shaheen, silver and perfect, and a small bell from the kingdom of Echo that would ring whenever someone below thought of him. The bell chimed softly, constantly, a reminder that he belonged to both worlds now. Ali was home, all his homes, and his story, the story of the boy who united 2 worlds, was just beginning. The end.